Hello, this is not the normal start to my channel, but I actually was unable to film yesterday, and right now it is going on about 10 minutes to 9, so about 10 minutes until we have to head out to go catch our train to go to Strasbourg. Today we are doing a day trip there to hit up all the Christmas markets because it's one of the most famous places in France, if not Europe, I guess. It's very well known for its Christmas markets, and they are like everywhere in the town. So that is our plans for today. So we will not be back until very, very late tonight. So I will not be able to talk about Les Miserables until tomorrow. But I just wanted to pop in here so you know what the hell is going on right now. So this is what we got from Strasbourg. We have this tiny glass tree here that I really, really like with all the ornaments. And yes, this is going to be our Christmas tree because we are unable to have one. I am a freaking coin goblin, so of course I got some coins. This is the clock in the cathedral. This is for the town and also the cathedral as well. And this is just like the symbol of the town. Apparently, like, the stork is what brings presents instead of Santa. And this is the other side. And then I got this at the cathedral, just an ornament of wood. And this was at one of the tourist shops. It's the crest of Strasbourg. And it's just a little decorative mug because I love stuff like this. And then we also got a few postcards, and we have like some plastic cups from just going to the food stalls, but yeah, that's it. So we are now into Wednesday, I think it is, and last night, pretty late, it was after 11 when we got home from Strasbourg, and the whole Strasbourg thing was a bit different than I expected. Like, going there was fine and everything. It only took just over an hour and a half. Coming home, not quite. It was 2.5 hours, and that last hour was hell because I just wanted to be off that train. The city of Strasbourg itself, I actually really, really like. It's the most walkable city I've ever been in. The only place we saw cars was right outside of the train station there, and so we were like shocked. Like, all the streets was just for like the tram, and so it was very unusual but so nice, like to just be able to walk everywhere. And there were so many people on bikes. Like, this is actually a place where I would feel safe being on a bike. I have never been on a bike in Paris and never will because it's terrifying. So like, I would live there. Like, it's so pretty, it's small, like we walked through the entire city very easily. It looked and felt really clean. So I really liked just the city itself. But however, the Christmas markets, we both felt they're a bit overrated. Like, obviously in Paris we have several large Christmas markets here, and they kind of felt like the same thing, just served a different variety of food, really. And like, when I was doing my research for this trip, if that's what you want to call it, I had read that each Christmas market is supposed to have like a different theme. Like, one is supposed to be like just items from that region, and maybe this one's more focused on food, maybe this one's more focused on like Christmas ornaments or whatever, but basically they're all supposed to have a different theme. That was not the case, not in our experience. Like, each one was pretty much just a copy and paste of the other, so like it felt really, really repetitive. And so instead of like walking to a different Christmas market and being like, oh hey, let's see what new things are here, it was just, oh, it's the same as stuff we've already seen 10 times before. And on top of that, the food, I was really excited to try new food. And almost everything we tried was not good. Like, the spatzel we had was so dry, like it was really hard to eat. The bretzel I had was also incredibly dry and just didn't have any flavor. So like, that was just really just to have food in my stomach. The hot cider was the one thing we had that was super good. Like, that's probably our favorite thing, but like a drink shouldn't be on the top of the list there. We had Bulle Mousse, which was pretty much like eating nothing. And then the best food-wise was the tarte flambée we had at the very end, but that wasn't even from a market. That was from a restaurant. And so it was just kind of like disappointing. And with the Christmas market thing, we just kind of had the feeling of like, well, we can get this at home, so why did we come here? And with how famous the Christmas markets in Strasbourg are, I just feel like my expectations were a bit higher than what was delivered. So love the city, not so much the Christmas markets themselves. And on that note, I'm gonna show the back. There we go. 2 packages from Books Depository here. I don't know why they send it as 2. Like, these are from the same order. And I know what they are, because I do not order books often or anything. And so I figured I would open them on here, because opening this part is always so satisfying. So let's see. Wait, does it? Oh, it's not! Usually they're like perforated. Will it still? Oh god. Okay, not as satisfying as Amazon's, but still works. So let's see. Oh gosh, Ori's standing on the other one. Whoa. So this is the bookmark. Looks like they have a different set going on now. It says Persiana every day, so I'm assuming it's talking about Persian food? Oh, it's a cookbook. Oh, interesting. So apparently they're doing gift inspirations on their bookmarks right now. And then the book is this tiny little thing, because there's no way I could find this anywhere else but online. And it is called They Came to Slay, The Queer Culture of D&D, and this is by Tom James Carter. And there's like a little series where all the books kind of look like this. They're this size and they have like a simple color palette kind of thing. I've seen a few booktubers talk about different ones, and that's how I saw this one pop up. And since we play D&D and I am part of the queer group, I thought it would be really interesting to read. And actually I just see on the back here it says, this book is unofficial and unaffiliated with properties Wizard of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons. Goodness. But yeah, this will just be a quick little read, and I am actually really interested in learning more about the history of Dungeons and Dragons, because there's another book. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I'll pop it up here real quick, and I would love to read that one as well. But since the whole concept of Dungeons and Dragons is being a different person than who you appear to be, I feel like it's pretty obvious where this is going to delve. Since I'm in a bit of a reading slump right now, that might be the next thing I read. And if I can get Ori to get off the package. Thanks. Okay. Alright, let's see if we can open this in one swoop again. Nice. Alright, in this book, I definitely know less about it than the other one. Oh wait, let me get the bookmark out. I keep forgetting they include bookmarks in here. Alright, what is this one? Oh, okay. This is, it's a Lee Bardugo book. This is the bookmark here. Oh, apparently it is from the same series. There's that one. And then the book I got is called Grimoire of the Four Impostors by Coy Hall. And just take a moment to appreciate that cover right there. This one also isn't very long, like it's pretty thin, and the font is also pretty large too. So this is one that I've actually had on my like want to read list for quite a while, and I have for like how? Well, I know how, but can it not be there? Where I added it a long time ago, so it's been probably like months, if not like a year since I've read the description. And it says, Journey into the Occult, where history is horror. Presented in 6 tales. Oh, okay, so they're short stories. Grimoire of the Four Impostors takes readers on a dark tour of the 17th century, where corners of the world stand in shadow. Here, grimoires possess secrets, impostors beguile the unwary, temptation turns macabre, and the night is no friend. So I really can't wait to pick this up. Also, it's one of those where the cover, like it feels different. I don't even know how to describe it. It's not like smooth, it almost has a bit of a texture of it, but yeah. This is definitely one where I'm partially picking it up just because of the cover here. So those are the 2 books I got. My plan now is to read my Les Miserables because I didn't want to have to do this just all straight through because my throat is bothering me today. So I'm gonna go read a few chapters of Les Miserables and be right back. Alright, I just finished 2 chapters here and I think the chair is going to be a little shaky because Ori actually just jumped on it and is taking a bath. But I also forgot, this is one of the things, this Christmas tree right here, some things we got at Strasbourg, and that's basically going to be our Christmas tree for the year, because normally we don't even have one. But anyway, these chapters, so the first one was the last chapter in that book, and isn't really too much of anything. It's called Two Men Impossible to Find, and I really had no idea what this was going to be about going into it. But basically, it's Marius trying to find Thénardier and the person that saved him, which we know is Jean Valjean, which for some reason he refuses to accept. Like it said in an earlier chapter that he kind of knew it was him, but by how he was acting and like pretending to not know what Marius was talking about, Marius just decided like, no, it can't be him kind of thing. But we also find out here, this is on page 1126, it says, the woman had died in prison during the trial, and the man and his daughter Azelma, the sole survivors of that lamentable group, had vanished into obscurity. So Madame Thénardier died, and like, I had been wondering if she was ever going to come back into the story, because she just disappeared when they all got arrested, and we heard nothing about her since. And so I was just like, come on! And now we find out she freaking died, like, so long ago. I'm surprised it really took until now for them to say so. And so this whole chapter is really just Marius trying to find them and really getting nowhere. Like, he interviewed the guy that drove the carriage that took Javert, Jean Valjean, and Marius to his grandpa's house. And, like, obviously he didn't know names or anything, and so he really didn't find out much. And in the end, he actually snaps at Jean Valjean because he hates how Jean Valjean always just has this air of, like, indifference about this. So this is on the next page, and it says, one evening when Marius was talking to Cosette and Jean Valjean about the mystery and his fruitless efforts to solve it, he became irritated by Monsieur Fauchelevent's air of apparent indifference. He exclaimed almost angrily, whoever he was, that man was sublime. Do you realize, monsieur, what he did? He came to my rescue like an angel from heaven. He plunged into the battle, picked me up, opened the sewer, and then carried me for a league and a half through those appalling underground passages, bent double with a man on his back. And why did he do it? Simply to save a dying man. He said to himself, there may be a chance for him, and so I must risk my life. He risked it 20 times over with every step he took. And the proof is that no sooner had we left that sewer than he was arrested. And he did all this without any thought of reward. What was I to him? Simply a rebel. Oh, if all Cosette's money were mine. It is yours, Jean Valjean interrupted. I would give it all, said Marius, to find that man. Jean Valjean was silent. And that's how that ends. So then we go into book 6, which is called The Sleepless Night. And this chapter is titled 16th of February, 1833. And this is Marius's and Cosette's wedding day. And it says, the night of 16 February was a blessed one, with a clear sky shading into darkness. It was the night of Marius and Cosette's wedding day. And then it goes on to say, I think this is really funny. It says, wedding customs in 1833 were not what they are today. France had not yet borrowed from England the supreme refinement of abducting the bride, carrying her off from the church as though ashamed of her happiness, like an escaping bankrupt, or like rape in the manner of the Son of Sons. The chastity and propriety of whisking one's paradise into a post-chaise to consummate it in a tavern bed at so much a night, mingling the most sacred of life's memories with a hired driver and tavern serving maids, was not yet understood in France. And I just love that shade toward England. I think that's amazing. And so not too much actually happens in this chapter. Like, it actually even says on the next page, we shall not take the reader to the Marie or the church ceremony, but will confine ourselves to recounting an incident unperceived by the wedding party, which occurred on the way from the Rue des Filles de Cavalier to the Church of St. Paul. And so instead, we focus on two characters who is very obvious who they are, but basically they end up getting married on Mardi Gras. And I think that's kind of interesting. And so the direct way to the church is actually blocked. And so they have to go the long way around where they're stuck with like the caravans of all the people celebrating Mardi Gras. So it's like very, very slow going. And there's like people dressed up for carnival like all over the place. There's two people in particular in a mask. One is a man, one is a younger girl. And the man sees Jean Valjean in the carriage and is like, I know that man, but he can't place it. And I don't understand how no one in this freaking book can recognize Jean Valjean like anywhere. It's ridiculous. So he's basically just talking to his daughter and is like, I need to know who this is. Like, you have to follow them. And she's all like, what the hell? Like, I don't want to get caught by the police. How about no? And he's like, well, you can move around more freely than I can. And by tomorrow, we won't be able to have these masks to disguise ourselves. And so she reluctantly agrees to follow the carriage to try and find out who they are, where they come from, everything, basically everything Thénardier wants to know. And so it does look like the Thénardiers are going to be involved at the end again, but not in the way that I think I'm expecting, because it's literally just him and his daughter left, and it's the one that like we've barely heard about. Her name's Zelma, I think, and that's it. That's the chapter, is just the conversation between those two. So not sure how that's gonna go, but I mean, they can't really crash the wedding if she's kind of like scoping out who they are kind of thing, because she really isn't like, doesn't know anything about Jean Valjean or Cosette. So I really don't know if she would recognize them. I feel like if she recognized any of them, it'd be Cosette, since in that incident, Cosette was the one that kind of like wrapped her arm or whatever. But I guess we'll find out. Like, I don't know. It just feels like they're not really gonna do anything in the end. I don't know. But the next chapter is called Jean Valjean Still Has His Arm in a Sling, because apparently like 2 days before the wedding he hurt his thumb, and so he can't like be the one to sign papers. So Monsieur Gillenormand, Marius's grandpa, is going to do that instead. I'm really tripping over my words now. The point of that in the book is so weird, because it even feels like Victor Hugo is kind of sick of it and is like, can we just end this now? With him being like, yeah, we're just gonna skip over the ceremony because whatever, they're married, whoop-de-doo. So we'll see if the next chapter is still before the wedding or if we're just gonna skip to after the wedding. If you hear what sounds like scraping sandpaper in the background, that's actually Ori licking the shower curtain. He does it pretty often, but I don't know why. It's just kind of his thing. So anyway, I just finished reading my chapter in Les Miserables. I'm still really freaking tired today, and it is so dark and bleak outside. Like, this is the worst time of the year for me. I absolutely hate it. So we are to the wedding, finally. Marius and Cosette, and Victor Hugo kept to his word. He didn't really go really much into depth about the actual wedding, but I'm just gonna read like what everyone was wearing, what they kind of looked like, kind of thing. So this is on page 1134, and this chapter is called Jean Valjean Still Has His Arm in a Sling. It says, Cosette at the church in the Marie was glowingly and dazzlingly pretty. She had been dressed by Toussaint with the help of Nicolette in a dress of Binche lace, which I don't know what that is, with a white taffeta underskirt, a veil of English stitching, a necklace of small pearls, and a crown of orange blossom. And she was dazzling in this whiteness. She might have been a virgin in process of being transformed into a goddess. Marius's beautiful hair was lustrous and scented, but here and there beneath its thick locks, the scars left by the wounds he had received on the barricade were still to be discerned. Monsieur Gillenormand, proudly erect, his costume and his manners more than ever depicting the elegance of the days of Barras, escorted Cosette, replacing Jean Valjean, who could not give her his arm since he still wore it in a sling. Clad in black, he followed them smiling. Which this confuses me, because it says that he injured his thumb, which I still don't know if it actually happened or not, or if he's just using this as a ruse to kind of like be stepping back. If you hurt your thumb, just take the sling off while you walk her down the aisle. Like, you don't need your thumb for that. It just seems really weird that the child he raised, like, to adulthood, he wouldn't walk her down the aisle. Like, That part just comes off a bit weird to me. And it goes on to say, Monsieur Fauchelevent, the old man said to him, this is a great day. I decree happiness, the end of all grief and affliction. Nothing bad may be allowed to show itself. That in fact there are unhappy people is a disgrace to the blue of the sky. Evil does not come to the man who is good at heart. All human miseries have their capital and seat of government in hell itself. In other words, those infernal Tuileries. But I'm not going to make a speech. I no longer have political opinions. All I want is for everyone to be rich and happy. Which, easy for a rich man to say. And so it literally just goes on, and they're like, yeah, they got up there, said their vows, did the thing, came out of the church and got back in the carriage. And the rest of the chapter is mostly about the reception at Gillenormand's house, since that's now where they're going to be living. And basically, right when dinner is announced, Jean Valjean just disappears, and the, like, butler guy, or whatever you want to call him, he's basically like, yeah, his thumb was hurting him, so he wanted to retire early, but he'll be back tomorrow morning. And everyone just kind of accepts this, and I feel it's a bit weird. This is on page 1137, and basically Jean Valjean was supposed to sit next to Cosette, but since he's not there, Gillenormand tells Marius to do it, and it says, Marius did as he was bidden, to the general applause, and so it fell out that Cosette, who had been momentarily distressed by Jean Valjean's absence, was made happy. She would not have regretted the absence of God himself had Marius been there to take his place, and she laid her small satin-clad foot upon his. Which, this to me is just another example of, like, Marius is just replacing everything in her life, and I don't like when people make another person literally their entire world and just, like, forget about everyone else who's always been there. It's just weird, and it's like, okay, so then how much do they really matter to you to begin with? So, I don't know. I don't like that exchange. I don't like that she's just so blinded by Marius. She's kind of like, oh, whatever. He said he'll be back tomorrow morning. It's fine. Like, what? Like, find out what's wrong. Like, it's just weird and not something I really like. And then the whole rest of the chapter, like, I'll show you. Look at these bricks. Look at these bricks of pages. Like, it's just a fucking long-ass speech that Gillenormand is giving about love, and so I'm only going to read a part of it because it's too much. So this is on page 1138. It says, can two people charm and delight one another too much? Be too happy, too much alive? Moderate your pleasures, what nonsense it is. Down with the philosophers, rapture is the true wisdom. Are we happy because we are good, or good because we are happy? I don't know. Life is made up of such riddles. What matters is to be happy without pretense, to be a blind worshipper of the sun. For what is the sun if not love, and what is love if not a woman? It is woman who is all-powerful. Is not Marius, that young demagogue, enslaved by the tyranny of that little Cosette? And gladly so. Woman, you may talk of Robespierre, but it is the woman who rules. That is the only kind of royalty I recognize. What was Adam except Eve's kingdom? What revolution did she need? Think of all the scepters there have been. The royal scepter surmounted by the fleur-de-lis, the imperial scepter surmounted by a globe, Charlemagne's scepter, which was of iron, and that of Louis le Grand, which was gold. And the revolution took them between thumb and forefingers and squashed them flat. So much for scepters, but show me a revolution against a little scented handkerchief. I should like to see that. What makes it so powerful when it is nothing but a scrap of material? Ah, well, we who belong to the 18th century were just as foolish as you are. You needn't think you have changed the world just because you have discovered a cure for cholera and invented a dance called the cachucha. We still have to love women, and there's no getting away from it. Love, women, and kisses are a magic circle from which I defy you to escape, and for my part, I wish I could get back into it. And he goes on and on and on like this, literally till the end of the chapter. And basically, the chapter ends with Cosette and Marius going to their room, and it's kind of implied that, yeah, they're gonna have sex, because obviously that's what you do on your wedding night kind of thing. And so the chapter literally just ends with saying, to love is an accomplishment. And so the next chapter is really short, and so I'm tempted to read it, but I think I'm going to stop myself, and it's called Inseparable, and the first sentence says, what had become of Jean Valjean? And so what I think happened here is he, based on how the movie and the musical is, I think he knows he's dying or something like that is happening. Maybe something happened when he had to go through the sewer, and that is causing this. But he is kind of just, no, why are you jumping? No, why are you jumping? Get down. But I feel like he is just kind of releasing Cosette into Marius's care and into this other family. And he is just going to step back quietly and go and pass in peace kind of thing. And so I think what he does is go back to the original church where he'd gotten the candlesticks from, but I'm not 100% on that. But I definitely don't think, like, even though they're like, hey, yeah, he's supposed to be back tomorrow morning, I don't think he's going to be there. I think he is going to where he wants to die, kind of thing. And so I guess we'll find out in that chapter tomorrow. But it's so weird to be so close to the end here. Like, and at one point I do want to go to the church where Cosette and Marius got married at and take some like pictures or video or whatever. But I don't know when, because like right now I think it rained a bit even, and it's just so bleak and cold. So I'm not really sure when is going to be a good day to do that, but... So my phone actually died when I was in the middle of filming that last clip, so if there's like a weird transition or whatever, if it's abrupt, I apologize for that. I did just finish reading 2 chapters of Les Miserables because the first one is very short, and I'm actually going to read quite a lot of it because it really shows how distraught Jean Valjean is. And so this chapter is called Inseparable. This is on page 1140, and it says, the dining room windows looked out onto the street, and Jean Valjean stood beneath them for a few moments, listening to the sounds of the party behind him. The predominating voice of Monsieur Gillenormand, the violins, the laughter, the rattle of crockery, and, distinguishable amid it all, the gentle, happy voice of Cosette. Then he left the Rue des Filles du Calvaire and returned to the Rue de l'Homme Armé. He arrived home, lit his candle, and went upstairs. The apartment was empty. Toussaint was not there, and the sound of his footsteps was louder than usual. All the cupboards were empty, and Cosette's bed was unmade, the pillow, without its lacy pillow slip, lying on a pile of folded blankets. All the feminine knickknacks that had been Cosette's had been taken away. Nothing remained in the room but its heavy furniture and bare walls. Toussaint's bed was also stripped. The only one that could be slept in was his own. He wandered from one room to another, shutting the cupboard doors. Then he went back to his own bedroom and put his candle on the table. He had taken his arm out of its sling and was using it as though it caused him no discomfort. So I think I was right in saying I think he faked this injury to more distance himself from Cosette and what was happening. Which, fucking why? I don't understand. Moving on, it says, he went towards his bed, and as he did so, his eye rested, was it by chance or was it intentional, on the little black box that Cosette had called his Inseparable. When they had moved into the Rue de l'Homme Armé, he had placed it on a footstool beside his bed. He now got a key out of his pocket and opened it. Slowly he took out the clothes in which Cosette had left Montfermeil 10 years before. First the little black dress, then the black scarf, then the stout child's shoes which Cosette could still have worn, so small were her feet, then the thick fustian camisole, the woolen petticoat, and, still bearing the impress of a small leg, 2 stockings scarcely longer than his hand. Everything was black, and it was he who had brought them when he took her from Montfermeil. He laid the garments on the bed, recalling that occasion. It had been a very cold December, and she had been shivering in rags, her small feet red from the clogs she wore. Her mother in her grave must have been happy to know that her daughter was in mourning, and that she was decently and warmly clad. He thought of those Montfermeil woods, through which they had walked together, the leafless trees, the absence of birds, the sunless sky, but still it had been delightful. He spread the garments on the bed and stood looking at them. She had been so little, carrying that big doll and with her golden louis in her apron pocket. She had laughed as they walked hand in hand, and he had become all the world to her. Then the aging white head sank forward, the stoical heart gave way, and his face was buried in Cosette's garments. Anyone passing on the stairs at that moment would have heard the sound of dreadful sobbing. And this is obviously so freaking sad, because it's him finally letting these emotions out towards, quote-unquote, losing Cosette. I remember them mentioning this box before and stuff, and it is, like, what it has inside is pretty much what I was expecting. Like, everything that he enjoys has to do with Cosette. So I actually think that's quite an important chapter to really show his emotions. But this next one, it gets a little weird, and I really don't understand his thinking here. The next chapter is called Undying Faith, and this is where he is basically really conflicted on what to do next. And he's like, it's a battle between light and dark, and like, which path is he going to go down? Is he going to go down a righteous path, or is he going to go down an evil path? And it's like, what? It's very strange. And so it's talking about that. But then halfway down the page, this is on page 1142, it says, the question was this: how was he, Jean Valjean, to ensure the continued happiness of Cosette and Marius? Which, why is it your problem, for one? Like, holy shit. It was he who had brought about that happiness, he who had forged it, and he could contemplate it with something of the satisfaction of the armorer who has worked well. They had each other, Marius and Cosette, and they were wealthy into the bargain, and all this was his doing. Which, like, haven't you done enough then? Like, just let it be. But what was he to do now with it, this happiness that he had brought about? Should he take advantage of it, treat it as though it belonged to him? Cosette was another man's, but he still retained as much of her as he could ever possess. Could he not continue to be almost her father, respected as he had always been, able when he chose to enter her house? And could he, without saying a word, bring his past into that future, seat himself by that fireside as though it were his right? Could he greet them smiling with his tragic hands and cross that innocent threshold, casting behind him the infamous shadow of the law? Could he still keep silent? Which, why is he freaking out so much about this? I really don't understand. Like, he already served his time, and it was for stealing fucking bread. It's not like he freaking murdered someone. And so he's like, oh my gosh, like, why? Like, I can't just be with them and be happy when I've been to prison before? Like, what? Why? I don't really understand why he thinks he doesn't deserve to be happy when all he's done his entire life is, like, struggle to survive. Like, it's like he has freaking Stockholm syndrome for being depressed or something, or, like, being hunted by the law. It's just so strange. And he goes on to say, one must have grown accustomed to the harsher face of destiny to be able to confront facts in all their hideous nakedness. Good and evil are behind the vigorous question mark. Well, demands the Sphinx, what are you going to do? Valjean, from long habit, looked it steadily in the eye. Pitilessly, he considered the facts in all their aspects. Cosette, that exquisite creature, was his lifeline. Was he to cling to it or let it go? So of course my phone's memory got full and while I was in the middle of reading that, and my husband has a meeting in 3 minutes, so I'm going to try and finish this really fast. So what I was reading was he to cling to it or let it go? If he clung to it, then he was safe. He could go on living. But if he let it go, then the abyss. And I really don't understand why he's thinking in this way. Like, it's like he has to always be miserable, and I want him to be happy. Like, I don't understand why he can't just be her father. It's just weird. And so this is just kind of what he's fighting with himself. And I don't, like, why would he go into the abyss if he lets her go? Like, even if you do that, just live a normal life. Like, be a normal dude. But it says, in the calm of exhaustion, Jean Valjean considered the two alternatives, the balance between light and dark. Was he to inflict his prison record on those two happy children or accept the loss of his own soul? Why? Was Cosette to be sacrificed, or himself? What are you even talking about there? His meditation lasted through the night. He remained until daylight in the same posture, seated and bent double on the bed, with fists clenched and arms outflung like those of a man cut down from the cross. He was motionless as a corpse, while the thoughts flew and tumbled in his mind, until suddenly he shuddered convulsively and pressed Cosette's garments to his lips. Only then did one see that he was alive. One. Who was that one, when there was no one else there? The one who was present in the shadows. What? Like, Jean Valjean, dude, like, you need some chill. And yeah, I need to stop this now, so whatever thoughts I have, I'll try to remember for later. Tiny blep. Ori! Ori! Hello, Ori. Hello, are you alive? Hello? Oh my god. What is that? Hello? That's where we're about to eat breakfast. And that is the church there. If I look like I've cried recently, it's because we just watched the newest episode of My Hero Academia, and like every episode for the past like month and a half has been making me cry. But anyway, you will have just seen this morning we went to see the church that Marius and Cosette got married in. So that was pretty cool to see. I've seen the outside multiple times, but I've never been inside, and it's quite a pretty church. Like the bright red doors are really cool. And yeah, I just really like churches like that have all the different like architecture and sculptures and stuff. I always find them fascinating. And I also just read another chapter in Les Miserables. This one is a long one and also kind of frustrating because Jean Valjean does kind of finally give us a reason for why he's thinking all these things. But basically the chapter starts out, I don't know if I said what the chapter name is before. Oh yeah, because this is the first chapter of book 7, which is called The Bitter Cup. And the first chapter is called The Seventh Circle and the Eighth Heaven. And so this starts with Jean Valjean going to where Cosette and Marius are living. And he has one of the servants bring Marius out to him, but is like, don't tell him who's here. This is on page 1146, and I'm just going to read these little few sentences. And it says, the sound of the door opening caused him to look up. Marius entered, head up and face aglow with triumphant happiness. He, too, had not slept all night. If you get the meaning there. So I thought that was like a funny way that Victor Hugo just kind of slipped in there, how their night kind of went with Cosette and Marius. And pretty much Jean Valjean just spills the beans on everything here. He just comes clean 100% to Marius about who he is. And it's just like, whoa, what? I really was not expecting that. And so on the same page, it says, I'm so delighted to see you. This is Marius speaking, by the way. We missed you so much last night. Is your hand better? He did not wait for a reply. We've talked so much about you, Cosette and I. She's so fond of you. You haven't forgotten, I hope, that you have a room here. We don't want any more of the Rue de l'Homme Armé. That ugly, squalid little street. How in the world did you ever come to live in it? But now you're coming here, and today, what's more, or you'll be in trouble with Cosette. I warn you, she means to have you here if she has to pull you by the nose. You've seen your room. It's very near our own, and it looks out over the garden. And then he just kind of goes on and on about like how the room's done up, like the view, things like that. And then he says, and of course you'll take Cosette for walks when I'm working, just as you used to do in the Luxembourg. We're absolutely determined to be very happy, and you're part of it, Father. Do you understand? Talking of which, you'll be lunching with us today. Monsieur, said Jean Valjean, I have something to tell you. I am an ex-convict. And that's where he starts. And it's just talking about how, like, Marius is just kind of standing there open mouth, like, what the fuck is going on? And so Marius is stunned. And it says, Valjean took his arm out of the sling, which still supported it, removed the bandage, and held his hand out to Marius. There's nothing wrong with my thumb, he said. There never has been, he went on. It was right that I should not attend your wedding party. I've kept in the background as much as possible. I invented this injury in order to avoid signing the marriage deeds, which might have nullified them. Marius stammered. But what does it mean? It means, said Valjean, that I have been in the galleys. I was imprisoned for 19 years, first for theft and later as a recidivist. I am at present breaking parole. And for some reason, Marius takes this to mean that he really is Cosette's dad, which is like, what? Like, why do you jump to that conclusion? And Jean Valjean is just like, no, like, seriously, I am not her father. I'm not blood related to her in any way. And he goes on to say, my name is not Fauchelevent, but Jean Valjean. I am a peasant from, oh God, I don't know if I can say this, Faverolles, where once I earned my living as a tree pruner. You may be sure of that. But what proof? Stammered Marius. My word is the proof. Marius looked at him. He was melancholy but calm, with a kind of stony sincerity from which no light could emerge. The truth was apparent in his very coldness. I believe you, said Marius. Jean Valjean bowed his head in acknowledgement. And then he explains like how he came to find Cosette,
and like the money and all of that. But then Marius goes on to say, why have you told me all of this? Nobody forced you to. You could have kept it to yourself. You aren't being pursued, are you? No one has denounced you. You must have some reason of your own for blurting it out like this. Why have you done so? There must be more, something that you haven't told me. I want to know what it is. And then he gives his reason, and it's just like, but why say it to Marius of all people? And then Ori is going by. My reason, said Jean Valjean, in a voice so low that he might have been talking to himself. Why should an ex-convict proclaim himself to be an ex-convict? Well, it's a strange reason, a matter of honesty. There is a bond in my heart that cannot be broken, as such bonds become stronger as one grows older. Whatever may happen in one's life, they still hold. If I could have broken that bond, dishonored it, all would have been well. I could simply have gone away. Coaches leave from the Rue Blois, and you are happy. There was nothing to keep me. I tried to tear out that bond, but I could not do it without tearing out my heart as well. I thought to myself, since I could not live anywhere else, I must stay here. You will think me a fool, and rightly. Why not just stay and say nothing? You have offered me a home. Cosette, but I should now call her Madame Pontmercy, loves me. Your grandfather would welcome me. We could live together as a happy, united family. And he goes on to being like, I don't belong to a family, least of all yours, and just like this weird self-pity. And then he says on the next page, I had to wrestle with myself all night. You may believe me when I say that in concealing my real name, I was harming no one. It was Fauchelevent himself who gave it to me, in return for a service I had done him. I could have been very happy in the home you have offered me, keeping to my own corner, disturbing no one, content to be under the same roof as Cosette. To continue to be Monsieur Fauchelevent would have settled everything, except my conscience. No matter how great the happiness around me, my soul would have been in darkness. The circumstances of happiness are not enough. There must also be peace of mind. I should have been a figure of deceit, a shadow in your sunshine, sitting at your table with the thought that if you knew who and what I really was, you would turn me out. The very servants would have exclaimed in horror. When we were alone together, your grandfather, you two children and myself, talking unconstrainedly, all seemingly at our ease, one of us would have been a stranger, a dead man battening on the living, and condemned to this for the rest of his life. Does it not make you shudder? I should have been not only the most desolate of men, but the most infamous, living the same lie day after day, cheating you day after day, my beloved, trusting children. It is not so easy to keep silent when the silence is a lie. I should never have ceased to be sickened by my own treachery and cowardice. My good morning would have been a lie, and my good night. I should have slept with the lie, eaten with it, returned Cosette's angelic smile with a grimace of the damned. And all for what? To be happy? But what right have I to happiness? I tell you, monsieur, I am an outcast from life. But really though, like, are you really? You literally were the mayor of a town and like completely transformed it and got all these people out of poverty and stuff. So like, how are you an outcast of life? I think Jean Valjean needs some depression meds or something. Like, it's really frustrating to see all the good he has done throughout this book just for him to be like, why do I deserve happiness? Like, me being here is just a stain. Like, how? Just because he stole a loaf of bread? Like, your entire life is just crap? Like, what? I understand where he's coming from, and I guess why he's doing this. He's held the secrets for so long. He wants to get these off his chest. But seeing the actions he's done, it just doesn't line up with how he feels about his life. And so while they're talking, Cosette actually walks in and she's all like just happy and everything and is like, oh, father, give me a kiss and all of that. And Marius is just kind of trying to shoo her away. And eventually he does. And in the end, Jean Valjean asks Marius, this is on page 1156, and it says, making a supreme effort, Valjean said in a scarcely audible voice, you are the master. Do you think, now you know everything, that I should not see Cosette again? I think it would be better, Marius said coldly. Then I will not do so, said Valjean, and getting up, he went to the door. But then he turns around and he ends up compromising with Marius. I don't understand how Marius goes from, no, you can't see Cosette again, to him being like, yeah, come every evening? And it's like, what? Like, I don't know. What they say and what they're doing are like two different things. It's really not making a lot of sense to me, and I also don't understand why he wouldn't want him to see Cosette anymore. But they are going to keep it a secret from her for now, so it's just Jean Valjean and Marius that know this now. God, I don't know. I feel like this bit just frustrates me, and once again, I know it's called Les Miserables, but I just want them to be happy. And so that's where that chapter ends, and the next chapter is actually the last one in that book, so this one is just very, very short. And I know this week's vlog is probably really, really long with everything that happened, So I'm going to end it there with just my frustrations on how they're acting. So we'll see what happens from there next week. So thank you for hanging out with me. As always, it is greatly appreciated. And until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.